afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, welcome to the internet's most sophisticated wrestling podcast, discussing the weekly aspects of it all, right here on
The Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast. It's been a wonderful week. Lots of things to talk about. I think the most important thing is that this past week...
Ladies and gentlemen, hear ye, hear ye. All hail the King, King Corbin.
Indeed.
That's the most important thing to talk about. The fact that we finally did something right, and we have our new king, King Corbin.
It's terrible, but yeah, Chris, you were right from the beginning. But let's talk about pretty much everybody who picked, except Steven, picked Corbin to win. But the final tallies, apparently this podcast should be named Tiro is the King of Picking this week. Because in total...
I like that
Mr.
name.
Tiro,
That's a good name.
Right? Mr. Tiro had 10 correct choices during the entire King of the Ring tournament, with me behind him at 7 and poor old James at 6.
Really, I'm surprised that I got that close. Actually, 6 picks. I mean,
Yep, you did have almost 2 rounds where you got nothing right though, but still.
Well, you know, I have to kind of put myself at a disadvantage because, like, later on when we picked something like what was it, Clash of Champions, you guys sucked, and I did pretty well.
That is
Yeah.
true.
Just throwing that out there. See, this is a common misconception here, people, that I'm awful at picking. Sometimes I'm awful at picking. Sometimes they're awful at picking. Guess what? It's difficult to pick these matches.
You never do know what's going to happen, yeah.
But I have something even more important to announce here. And it is not that King Corbin it has arrived.
It's not important.
That is not as important as the creamy one making an appearance. Yes, Creamy Kraemer, one of the Bald Monkeys that you guys have never heard before, has made his debut on the podcast this week. Say something for us, Creamy.
Oh, it's true. It's damn true. Creamy Kraemer is here.
Yes. It is an exciting event.
Cup of cream in hand.
So let's jump into it. Okay, so as we sit right now, we have some major things that have happened. So NXT has finally debuted on USA. We will talk specifically about that a little bit later. AEW, we are a week and a half away from AEW. And we're also...
Exciting. Dynamite.
2 weeks.
Dynamite.
2 weeks away from Smackdown arriving on Fox. So there is a lot of stuff coming down the pipe, boys. But let's start with Raw, because Raw's at the beginning of the week, right? Raw starts, and what do we have? We have Seth Rollins getting in the ring, and immediately what ended up being a trend, Bray Wyatt shows up on the screen with the Firefly Funhouse. And oh my goodness, did Bray Wyatt ever carry this Raw? I mean, he put this Raw on his back and he carried it to the finish line. Not to say that the rest of the Raw was bad, because I don't think it was. There was a few not great moments, but goodness gracious, they are leaning heavily on Bray Wyatt, and for the moment, he's taking them over the finish line.
Yeah, but it's a scary thought right now, because if you lean this heavy on this character right now, what's the end game? What are we getting to? And are we just getting to Bray Wyatt being the Universal Champion? Because if we get to that point, what do you do after that? Who's chasing Bray Wyatt? This is the one time where I'm all in on the Fiend, just like all of us are. But I'm really worried about the direction of the storyline, because I don't like him being the one everyone's chasing. I think it works better when he's chasing and driving everyone crazy, or not, and people not knowing, surprising everyone. So I kind of don't like the fact that they're going to have this match at Hell in the Cell, unless there's some kind of no finish, or he loses without losing, a way to look strong. Maybe an interference or something, but it's just a little nerve wracking, because they have such a good character and such good promos going with him. And this could really get down a dead end street here with him winning the title.
Yeah. When it comes to the title thing, it's too much too soon right now. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you, Chris. It's been such a great build-up, and to now throw him in the story of the title and everything, it's kind of like, again, we have to wait to see what happens. But, I mean, if he wins, it's way too quick.
Yeah, well, okay, so that brings us to one of our favorite little segments then, because although I would say that the story is working, how do we fix this storyline so that we avoid a title? What is the best way of doing that? What do you think, Chris?
I mean, the easiest thing to do is to insert the demon. I'm trying to rack my brain about how you would do that, other than maybe lights go out and maybe they come back on and the demon's just standing in the ring, and Seth is gone. Essentially you just remove Seth entirely from the match and you have a no finish. You don't necessarily, I mean, it's a crappy way to end a match, but I actually would prefer that to them having him lose to Seth, or having him beat Seth. Just basically they're in the middle of the ring, they've been going at it, Hell in the Cell. All of a sudden the lights go out like they normally would with the Fiend, and you think he's doing something, and the lights come back on and Seth's gone, and it's the demon standing in the ring.
I don't disagree with the direction, although I don't know that I would do the demon. I almost
kind
think
of an easy one. That's the only reason I did it.
I think it might be more effective if they're willing to sacrifice somebody high up on the totem pole, and by that I'm talking about the Undertaker, and you do something very similar, and then the Undertaker shows up. It's like, so lights go out, typical bells, and then all of a sudden Seth Rollins is gone and the Undertaker's sitting there in front of the Fiend, and then lights go out again and the Fiend is basically just destroying the Undertaker. And that's I don't see that's
them.
That's your finish of Hell in the Cell.
I love it, but I feel like Undertaker's untouchable. The most he's done is lose a match to Lesnar and lose a match to Reigns at WrestleMania. Beyond that, have we ever seen the Undertaker really been overtaken as like the dark character? I don't know that anyone's ever been able to do that.
The reason I like the idea of it is because you have a character in Bray Wyatt who has adopted as one of his signature moves a move of somebody who has one of the most famous matches with Undertaker ever in a Hell in the Cell match. So he does the mandible claw by Mankind. Well, Mankind has the most, one of the most important matches ever, which really isn't. I mean, you think about it. It's like
it's not much of a match.
It's not much of a match. It's a match with two spots. Well, I'm not asking for much of a match out of Bray Wyatt with any of his matches, because he's not that type of a character. You know, if they ever get to the point where it's like, oh, we really need to lean on Bray Wyatt to wrestle, I think that when they've written that wrong. That's the problem. That's always, I think, going to be the issue with the inevitable Fiend versus the Demon anyway. It's like, you know, the wrestling part of it. Because the storytelling part of it's the kind of the easy part.
And James, with what you said, it kind of ties in with what was going on between The Undertaker and Sami Zayn the other day. With like the passing of the torch. You know, that could be a way of, you know, like you said, or I think Chris said, you know, the Undertaker is the number one dark character, and now you have the Fiend being a dark, maniacal character. Like that could be a way of, you know, the, like I said, quote, passing of the torch.
Absolutely. So, you know, I don't know what direction they're going in, but as he said, you know, Raw. I mean, he showed up a whole bunch of times, and you know, and he was hanging
the
pictures.
upside down graphics, the promos, the screen was actually upside down for a while.
Yeah, it was.
That was part of it too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they were doing all types of crazy stuff. My favorite was the Firefly Funhouse stuff at the very end of the show was just creepy and weird. It went
on for like 5 minutes. It felt like.
Oh my gosh, I was like, and by, you know, 30 seconds into it, I was like, God, this is flipping creepy, man. It was interesting, but from that great thing that started to Raw to one of the worst things you could possibly do ever, WWE, what the hell is wrong with you? You take these two fresh heel tag teams and you put them in the ring, and then you have Braun Strowman come out to destroy them? Are you flippin' stupid? Are you stupid, WWE? Do you not care about your tag team division at all? Oh, look, we've got these great new tag teams. We're going to have one person come out and destroy them. I actually wouldn't have had a problem if Braun Strowman came out there and they literally beat the crap out of him, because it's 4v1. That would have been nice. I would have actually appreciated that if you had to keep that segment in there. But no, we're going to have him go out and destroy everybody. Give me a break.
No, it's what we complain about every week with the tag team division. They have momentum all of a sudden with tag teams, and they have a lot of good tag teams, and they don't want to invest in the tag teams. They want to invest in these big guys and the storylines for the big guys, and I don't get it. You said it. I mean, it's just wrong. You know, it's 4 versus 1. You can't. Braun Strowman is not. He couldn't beat Seth Rollins 1-on-1, but he's going to beat these guys 4 versus 1. Come on, let's be realistic. I know it's wrestling, but let's be a little more realistic.
It's not realistic at all. I mean, I thank goodness that, you know, the next segment had, you know, the Viking Raiders actually for 2 weeks in a row now facing against
someone.
The OC, and they're paired with Cedric Alexander, which I think, again, is fine. I think it's an interesting pairing up, and I think it is giving Cedric Alexander a bit of a push. Like he's getting a lot of exposure against AJ Styles, and it seems like the crowd is starting to get behind them. And you're still having these incredible AJ style finishes, which is getting over in itself. I mean, you know, it's funny listening to those crowds react, because Cedric Alexander does something crazy, and then all of a sudden it gets reversed into a Styles clash off of the top rope, and everybody like goes, ooh, but then they're cheering like in the background, like, oh God, that was awesome. You know,
what are they doing to Cedric Alexander? Like, so go back. Let's go back to Clash. And we don't even get Cedric Alexander and AJ Styles on the main show. We get it on the pre-show, which is like the most incredible thing I think we've seen in a long time. A match that we were all assuming was going to be somewhere in the middle of the show and probably be one of the best matches on the card turns into what, a 5 to 10 minute match where he gets squashed by AJ Styles, basically.
Well, I don't
And
even
then
know
they
if
do
was...
it again on Monday. It's like, what are they doing to Cedric Alexander? All of a sudden, it was like this great push, and now it's like you're beating him back down again.
I don't
Yeah,
know that
and-
I agree with that, though. Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, what I didn't like was that it was the second match of the pre-show, so you knew it had a time limit on it, which was the dumbest thing. I mean, as much as the 205 Live, the cruiserweights, and they kind of get second-handed by WWE a little bit. Like, I mean, if you're gonna do that, let that match go for a while and give it the time it needs. Like, you don't need so much hype in the beginning of the pre-show. Like, that should not have been such a short match to start off, the pre-show for Clash of Champions.
Yeah. From the Clash perspective, I think it was unforgivable. But from the Raw perspective, I haven't had an issue with it. I didn't have an issue with Alexander and the Viking Raiders losing to them on Raw. I thought the match was pretty good. It had a lot of solid spots. I think they're trying to do one of these weird kind of like Cedric is an underdog, but he's getting there by getting stifled and getting aggressive. Like, so it's not like, against an all odds type of a deal. It's that they keep flipping cheating and, he's just getting more and more frustrated. But I think this is a push for him. It's just a push in a different way. And I don't necessarily dislike it. I think it's working fine. The Clash thing was just weird.
Don't have the Clash match. Don't have the Clash match.
Well, no.
They should have just canceled the Clash match, right? Just don't even have.
No. They should have canceled the Roman Reigns match, and that was a great spot. Okay.
Wait.
Back up.
No way. The Roman Reigns spot was amazing. That was one of the best spots of the night.
But that I agree. But to play Tiro for a second, to play you, Chris, it wasn't for a championship. It's Clash of Champions.
Yes.
And so,
I mean, yeah,
so from
100% that should. Okay, so I agree. Because
I agree with you too.
I
agree with you too. I think it was okay. Me and Chris were at Clash of Champions, and it was very exciting. At the Roman Reigns part was very, very exciting because it was like when you're not watching the television portion of it, they've got the cameras focused on Rowan and Reigns, and me and Tiro, we're up in the cheap seats, but no matter what, like, we see somebody come out from under the ring, and I start jumping up and down. I'm like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? Oh my God, look, who's that? Right there. And all of a sudden, enter Harper. And
see, and that's the only reason why that match,
yes,
and I think in Chris's opinion worked so well,
yes,
was because Luke Harper came out and then just destroyed Roman Reigns there, like, as soon as he got out. That's the only reason why. If that didn't happen, Chris, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if that didn't happen, you would have been what you said last week, and that should not have been on Clash of Champions.
I was complaining about it the whole time, Sunday, as we talked about the match and when it was going to be and when they're going to put it on the card. The whole time I'm like, why is this match on the card? Why is it here? For no other reason but for something to happen. So trust me, I was sitting there going, something better happen. Something better happen. I don't know what it's going to be. Unfortunately, I thought it was going to be Daniel Bryan the whole time. I did not expect Harper. We all hoped for Harper. I think we all talked about Harper for a while, but we didn't expect Harper. So when it was actually Harper, yeah, that made that match. But again, without that spot, that match never even should have been on the pay-per-view. But there's a couple things that happened on that pay-per-view that really irked me. That actually I liked. The thing that I want to bring up is, what in the hell are they doing with the women's tag? We talk about the men's tag. Let's talk about the women's tag division. So almost saved by a really cool spot. We get the 24/7 title run in during the women's tag match. And we get Alexa Bliss almost roll up R-Truth. Amazing spot. We all laughed our asses off. But Here's my issue with that. They know, or they think at least, the women's tag matches cannot stand alone without putting something in them for people to be interested in them. It's a shot at the women's tag division. If you think that you can't have the match stand up by itself, you're doing something wrong. So they decide to put the 24/7 run in that match so that it's more interesting. If you're not doing a good enough job, then you need to push that women's tag division more. You need to push those women's tag titles. You need to build tag teams, have an actual division, or get rid of the titles. Because if you can't stand behind those belts, don't have them.
I agree. And, the interesting thing, being there and saying, and you could have seen this, watching from home for sure, but, being there, we're up there, we're watching, and Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville come out, and they've got this kind of clunky, kind of awkward, but it was a tag team intro. It says Fire and Desire. Like, they're being pushed out as a tag team. And then you have this intro where it's just, okay, here Cross comes out. Okay, now Alexa Bliss comes out. And just at that moment, I remember looking over at Chris and being like, that is why Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose need to win right there. Because they're not even committing to Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross as a tag team, which really just, I think, pushes us in the direction of, when we've talked about this before, that eventually there's going to be a breakup of those two, and they'll probably end up fighting each other. But if you're not going to commit to them, then I don't want you to put the title on them. It doesn't make any sense. Like, put it on people that you're dedicated to having them as a tag team. And while I might not be the biggest fan of Mandy Rose, I'm a huge fan of Sonya Deville, and I like them as a tag team in general. They've got an interesting dynamic, and although it's a little awkward sometimes, it's like, well, but they're still a tag team. They come off as a tag team, and those are the types of tag teams that you want the belts to be on. You don't look at. I feel like I'm Chris right now talking. You don't look at the Revival and say, "Oh, those are two singles wrestlers." You go, "No, it's the Revival. They're a good tag team."
I love all the layers of tag team wrestling that I've put into this podcast, and now everyone's just speaking for me. It just works really well. I just could sit here and just listen.
The week of Tiro.
Oh, by the way,
Continues.
Speaking of the tag teams, we would be dumb not to talk about the fact that, suddenly Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross are giving Banks and Bayley a tag team match, and of course they lose to Banks and Bayley. So makes me even more confused. While I don't know. I mean, I think that Banks and Bayley are a good tag team. They seem like more of a tag team than Bliss and Cross. But still, the match in itself is weird because they're both being pushed as singles wrestlers. And before the match even happens, I'm thinking to myself, well, it would be stupid for Bayley and Banks not to win. Because they're just going to win, period. And guess what? Yeah, they won. So why did we have that match?
It's like WWE is doing what AEW probably should do. AEW should probably focus on their top women's wrestlers because those are the ones that could pretty much wrestle, where the rest of the roster is a little bit thinner because they're a little more green. They're just not as polished. WWE has a better roster of women's wrestling, and yet they're focusing on just the top half of it rather than building all these other girls up into viable tag teams, a viable possible mid-card kind of idea, not necessarily for a title, but just mid-card women's wrestling. I just don't get it. It's like they're, instead of excelling in women's wrestling, which they can do against AEW, they are, at the beginning of this week at least, they're kind of regressing. We'll get to the other ones.
The beginning of this week? Wait a second, because I'm going to throw out one of your favorites. Because on this exact same night, not only do we have this weird muddled tag team match, but we have a singles match that is Lacey Evans versus Dana Brooke. Dear God, shoot me in the head. Why?
That's the dartboard effect. They were like, okay, we need to get Lacey in here. Who are we gonna have her go against? Zoom. Oh, Dana Brooke. Okay, hey, you're not doing anything
Oh.
right. No, there's no conga line tonight. There's no anything crazy. Okay, you're
Oh my God. It's not just Dana Brooke, though. It's Lacey Evans. She's still rusty. Like, everything's just not going good in Camp Evans, and then Dana Brooke is Dana Brooke.
They should have kept Lacey Evans with Corbin for a little while longer, not necessarily as a valet, but just like with him, because I think she could have used the time to kind of get more promo time, get more ring time. She's gonna get there, but yeah, I agree. There's just some weird rust going on with some of her in-ring style.
Well, maybe now that it's King Corbin, Lacey Evans will be a little bit more interested in becoming his valet.
It could be, yeah. I would buy that. Obviously, King needs a queen, and it would be specifically for business purposes. So, but they could totally pull that off, I think. And I would be so surprised if she would show up with like a nice big crown, a long gown, waving the queen wave to the crowd. Like, she could totally pull that character off.
Yeah, it's right up her alley.
Now, if we're continuing with spots that were probably bad, but this is going to be one that was bad, but it got saved at the end. It got saved. And that would be the gender reveal of Maria's baby. And this was a very dumb spot going into the match where it's like, oh, Ricochet is the father. And then they pivot to a Ricochet Mike Kanellis match. Still dumb. The match ends. Still dumb. Maria Kanellis at the top. Actually, the baby's somebody else. And then it's Rusev. Oh my God, it's saved by Rusev. Just the presence of Rusev. Because it's been so long.
I can't believe that they're still going with this Kanellis thing. Like, why? Why? And by the way, I said this in the text, but Rusev looks exactly like Mr. Belvedere.
Jacked Mr. Belvedere. Yes. He was lean, mean. He's lean, mean fighting machine, too, man. You can tell he's been gone for a while and he's been working out. Guy is cut.
And he lost his accent, and he has a fantastic mustache.
All right. So here comes Chris on the other side of the fence. Rusev's great. I love Rusev. I don't like this at all. I think having Rusev back is great.
It's not even a continuous storyline. It's not a continuous storyline. It's a one-off, Chris.
But it didn't save anything to me. It was just like, what? Okay, cool. He's back. What are we doing? So we're just ignoring the fact that he's married to Lana. We're just ignoring the fact that this is like ridiculous. Like, we're just, okay, this is the direction we're going to go with this gender reveal now. So I didn't buy it. I think there was better ways to bring Rusev back. And this is just probably, like you said, a one-off, but I hope it's over like immediately. Like,
well,
now.
What do you think from a story perspective the 24/7 champion is? It's 24/7 championship is just a whole bunch of one-off skits over and over and over again that don't make any sense, and that if you weren't into them and you didn't think they were funny, you'd probably be sitting there and being like, yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand.
But you have that. You have the 24/7 title that is your one-off, doesn't make any sense, fun promos. You don't need another one to do. The 24/7 owns that spot. It works in that spot. If you keep doing that and have more and more just one-off funny spots, then where's the real promos? Where's the real storylines? You need to be careful about how much ridiculousness you put on TV, because then it just gets inconceivable. Instead of it being like realistic a little bit.
As a small aside, it is important for me to, and I'm going to jump shows just to make this point for a second. Across all of the shows, we did have a lot of returns or announcements of returns. So we saw Rusev this week. We saw a promo package for AOP. I think they're going to put AOP on Fox. That's what I pulled from that promo package, because they're trying to build them as real fighters, which kind of like is like, okay, they're going to put them on Fox because of that. We had the return of Luke Harper, obviously at the pay-per-view, and then Leo Rush, who got, thrown into the cruiserweight contention, which
number one contender
is good. I mean, God, Leo Rush is a great wrestler, so I wouldn't have any issues with it. But it's cool. I think it's cool that you have all these people like starting to show back up and they're ready to go, and perfect time right before this divide. They're going to start separating people up.
But now the other side of this is you have so many wrestlers now. Some of these guys are coming back, and you have 7 hours of show to do, and you're going to be doing the brand split, which from what it looks like, you're not going to be having people cross over. So you have a plethora of wrestlers on both shows, even NXT. And are all of these people going to be able to have their time, during Raw, during SmackDown, during NXT? Like, how is it going to work? Are people still going to get shunned in the back, or are they going to kind of do what we talked about, like months and weeks ago about like have a rotating, like gives this guy off a week here, throw him back in the next week. Like, it'll be interesting to see how they handle all that.
I think that's the way to go. I think, Jimmy's idea from way, way, way long ago in this podcast history, the idea of just giving, guys a week off, like going back and forth in storylines so that you keep coming back to watch, because maybe it's a storyline from 2 weeks ago or a storyline from a week ago, or it's a continued storyline, or you're never quite sure who's going to show up. We talk about this all the time. We want to be surprised, right? We want to get that surprise pop, and I think it'll work on TV. If you don't know what storyline's next or what's coming up on this week's, storyline episode, it'll be more interesting, and it gives guys more exposure.
But it all comes down to everything that we always talk about with it being consistent. You just can't throw in these crazy little things and then never come back to it. But if you're going to do that rotating type of schedule and not have the same, let's say 10, 20 people on all the time, everything's got to stay consistent. They actually have to have what we talk about, have an end game, have a storyboard in process for everything that's going on, and not do my dartboard effect of, oh, well, this week we're going to do this, and it'd be like totally completely out of the box and not even work.
I think NXT has been doing a really good job of that through the tapings. So if you go back and think about all the NXTs that we've been watching, NXT doesn't consistently have the same storyline week to week because they only have a little bit of time to present something. So they tend to have a couple of matches in one storyline, and then a couple of weeks later, this other storyline comes back on TV and so on. And I think they've done a really good job of it with tapings. I'm interested to see what they do when they go live. It's going to be hopefully the same pattern, and again, what's worked. It's the idea that you might get Killian Dane and Matt Riddle 1 week, but you're not going to get them immediately the next week. You might get Keith Lee and Dojovic 1 week, but you're not going to get them for a couple of weeks after that. Let's spread it out a little bit and let other guys get some time.
NXT in particular has a lot of, and it was weird actually. I think when I was watching this week, it was when it's because of that whole hour thing. Because you only watch it for an hour every week, you don't realize that there's definitely room if you kind of shake the rosters up a little bit to give some people time, because you had like that what was that guy's name, Gibson or Grimes or whatever versus Maluda, like unnecessary spot. He just
it was an intro spot.
Yeah, I mean,
it's an intro spot.
Yeah, but that being said, it's like I don't see that happening all the time moving forward when you could fill that spot with a more established wrestler. And NXT is the one that if you're moving it to 2 hours live every week, there's going to be plenty of room to throw storylines into that. And especially if you keep the rosters the way that they are and you keep some of the people that are in development down there, well, those are the people that the most need a week off because you can't just throw them on television every single week.
Well, but look. I mean, you're gonna have to do that sometimes, though, because you got to introduce these people to the crowds. Because
Sure.
there's a lot of people who haven't been watching the network and haven't seen any of these wrestlers. Grimes is, he was big on the whatever that the advantage match or whatever the newcomers match that Regal put together. But let's talk about who wasn't on the show this week. Johnny Gargano was not on the show this week.
Yeah.
The first ever live show of NXT, and you don't have Johnny Gargano. You don't have like your biggest name in NXT for a long time. Ciampa wasn't on the show. Obviously, he's still rehabbing, but two of your biggest name guys weren't on the show. And I think that's what they need to lean on. You don't need to have these guys on the show every week.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also
Wait, hold on. Before we go on,
okay.
I just have one thing. Was it weird to see the Street Profits in that brawl backstage?
Weird. So what's the better word for it? What? Why? What are we doing?
Yeah, like what are they doing with them? Like you've been on Raw and now you're back here.
Are we just giving them the benefit of being in NXT, so they're going to get drafted eventually? Obviously, you would think. Or I'm not sure.
I think that's where their first match comes in. By the way, is I don't think they're actually going to fight until they get drafted,
which is fine. I think it's a good way to introduce them. And if we're gonna, so let's stay on NXT one more second, because we have to give kudos to those 4 women that opened up the first ever NXT live show.
Dude, that match
Holy
was awesome.
crap. What a match. Holy crap. And I'll give Nakamura credit for this. What the perfect way to show AEW what AEW can't do. They put in 4 great wrestlers, women wrestlers, and they stole the show. They had an amazing match. And that's how you opened up the first ever NXT. Like that was a great put together match, and it was perfect for what NXT is.
Yeah, I think that the more interesting thing to me was not the hey AEW, this is how you do it. It was also the hey rest of the WWE, this is how you do it. Like you have an abundance of good top level wrestlers. So what did you do? You created a match that showcased all of your top women talent to create a number 1 contender. That's just good week to week booking. Make a really good match that you can give them time because, and the good thing about, 4-way matches in the realm of things nowadays is that they become spot matches, which is what I think a lot of fans like nowadays. They're not into like these long story matches unless you have the right people involved. So they prefer the fast-paced spot to spot to spot to spot match, which this is definitely what that was.
That like totem pole from the corner with the power bomb at the bottom with the suplex with that was amazing. I loved.
Yeah,
it was well done.
It's been a while since I've seen one of those spots because there was a time where WWE kept doing those spots over and over and over again.
Yeah, they leaned on them pretty heavy for a while there, but yeah, it was done really well. Everybody, took the bump really well. It just it had to, I mean, I don't want to put it all the way at a takeover, but it had the feel of a takeover Wednesday night. Like it really did. Everybody was out there to put out their best. And minus maybe a match or two if you would have like put the title on the line if Cole would have been out there. It felt close to what a takeover feels like.
Well, they made some interesting statements in that first NXT. And I think the most interesting statement they made was having Imperium show up. Because Imperium, that's NXT UK. But all of a sudden, okay, now we have Imperium showing up on NXT. So that means we're taking NXT UK. It's like I almost feel we used to talk about this a while back, and your major argument, Chris, used to be no, leave UK alone. Like they need some talent in UKs to build their brand. And I don't think that that's the mindset right now. I think the mindset is how can we make NXT be the absolute best show that it can be, since it's going to be the one that's competing against AEW. And that's why they're dipping into the UK roster a little bit.
Yeah. I get that. I hope it's more of a dip into the roster, let them get some exposure on NXT television and then live television, and then send them back to NXT UK. Like have them go back and forth. Like I'm cool with the crossover, the idea that they kind of show up on either show. I think that would make a lot of sense. But if they're going to be strictly on NXT in Orlando, that's going to be a problem, because you're going to strip UK of a lot of good talent.
So for people that didn't have the network, the only other major match that they saw during the night was Velveteen Dream versus Roderick Strong, which ended the way I think that most of us thought it was going to end. I remember Tim came up to us at work this week, and he's like, "Damn, you guys jinxed us." It was like, no.
I've been telling everybody that we'd be
anything.
dripping in gold this year. Everybody, I let everybody know. Again, the week of Tiro continues. Dripping in gold.
And I stick with what my original thoughts were. Was it this past podcast or the one before it, where I was like, okay, I get that they're going to be dripping in gold, and I'm not shocked that they are dripping in gold. Totally unrealistic. Velveteen Dream is a beast.
What do you mean unrealistic? He took two of Roddy's finishing moves. And obviously there was interference. He took a super kick. It was perfect. It was completely realistic.
Nah,
it's a 3-on-1.
Velveteen Dream is unstoppable.
He got hurt during that match on one of Strong's finishers. I think definitely that last one, because he took it like on the side of his body and on the side of his back instead of like the straight part of his back. I was like, oh, that did not look good.
Yeah, look, apparently he's been like hobbling around and he's not quite clear, but he might be strong and he might be a beast, but you can't take away from Roderick Strong. Like that guy's got
taken
talent.
Away from Roderick Strong. It's just Velveteen Dream, with maybe the exception of, I mean, he's just up there, right? Like, as much as I do like Roderick Strong, you have kind of like your top order of people at the very top of NXT, and those people are like Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. Well, Velveteen's right up there in that discussion of being, one of the most important people on NXT.
So here comes Tiro. I think they missed the boat on Velveteen. I think we're starting to trend in the opposite direction. I was on board, I was, for a while, but there's just something recently that I'm not feeling from Velveteen Dream. I think it's starting to get a little more repetitive. He's a decent wrestler. He's obviously good in the ring. He's way overreactor when it comes to bumps, which I love. He's got very Shawn Michaels-esque, over the top bumps in him. But I just feel like we're trending in the other direction for him right now. I think we kind of missed the peak that he was at and the opportunity to maybe bring him up or give him a bigger push when he was going up against the likes of Aleister Black or even Ciampa.
Easy solution. Move him. Put him on a different show and have him. He needs
a fresh start.
He can literally do the stuff that we're used to seeing him do on the main roster for fans that are not used to seeing him. And I still think it'll work.
I think that's the right move. And again, if you listen to this podcast, you know I'm not the one to say bring people up or move people. I like keeping people where they're at because I like the consistency of it. I don't like stealing from brands, but I think in this case you're right. I think Velveteen needs a fresh start.
Not to mention, I hate to be on that WWE wagon or the WWE superstar wagon, but there are a few people like and the problem is you look at some of these NXT stars and you judge them a little bit physically. I'm not sure if Chris might disagree with me on this, but you judge them physically, and these guys like Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, they're a little small, and that can have hear me out. That can have a little bit of an effect when they go up against the people like the Randy Ortons who, like, you don't realize how big Randy Orton is till you've been to like a live show and he walks past you and you're like, holy crap, this guy's flipping huge. But Velveteen does not suffer from that. Velveteen is a big guy. So he is big and he's big enough in himself in itself to translate to the main roster, where we've always had that worry about Johnny Gargano. You move Johnny Gargano up to like a main roster and he's a pretty small guy.
I think you're going to have trouble with Gargano on the main roster, but there's other guys that I have hope for. I have hope for Cole because I think that his character is bigger than his build. You know, there's guys out there that made it that weren't big guys. Shawn Michaels is one of the greatest of all time, and he wasn't a huge guy. Rey Mysterio, obviously, because of his moveset, you know, was
Daniel
able
Bryan.
to make it. Daniel Bryan, again, because of his moveset and his character, was able to make it. You know, there's other guys that are starting to push the envelope with these smaller guys that are able to make it. AJ Styles isn't a big guy, but again, moveset and character. If you have the right moveset, you have the right character, you can push the heavyweights. Seth Rollins isn't necessarily a huge guy. He's just more of like a medium-sized guy. So I agree that there's some people on the NXT roster that I'm concerned about. I think Ciampa comes to mind as a guy that has the character, but is it going to be believable for him to go up against anybody other than the babyface on the main roster as a huge heel for us to be like, yeah, Ciampa as the heel could finagle his way through a win against this babyface? Like, I just hope that they keep it in that direction with Ciampa.
Well, my main point being, I think that Velveteen is one of the easiest translatable characters to another show.
Does he have enough moves? Does he have enough moves?
Yeah, like, I think so.
I'm starting to see the same moves over and over
okay,
again.
Watch any wrestler. Oh my God, watch
I
it.
get
Watch
that.
it.
How many
watch
moves does Braun Strowman have? How many moves does Roman Reigns have?
Well, not even
How
that.
many
Not
moves
even
does
that.
Brock Lesnar have?
Watch how many moves does Rey Mysterio have? I mean, if you watch somebody long enough, you're going to see the same stuff over and over and over again. Like, just because, you know, they do, okay, I'm going to do this move, but this time I'm going to do it by jumping off of a top rope or something like that, or bouncing, you know. Like, it doesn't change the fact that, you know, I watch a Rey Mysterio match and I get annoyed, like, oh, really, a 619? Why do I have to see a 619 every single match? Oh, because it's Rey Mysterio. No, that's not a good enough reason. You know,
I like Chris in the background going, a lot.
Rey Mysterio's got a lot of moves. I think that was a bad example on your part.
No. I think any wrestler
he pulls out a lot of new stuff.
But even AJ Styles, right? Okay. Listen, and I'm gonna go AJ Styles, and here's the thing: I know AJ Styles has a lot of moves. He obviously does, but does he use a lot of moves with consistency? Because I always see phenomenal forearms, and I always see Styles catches. Yeah, but it keeps it fresh enough, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, there are so many wrestlers that you can make that critique about. You know, Finn Balor's one of the worst. Like Balor.
That was the one I was going to bring up. Like, Finn Balor is the one that his matches seem to look exactly the same every time, and that's my major point. The moveset can be limited if you make the matches look different, but from time to time, these guys that only have so many moves, the matches look identical. It's like you're watching the same match over and over again. How many sling blades am I going to see? How many Superman punches am I going to see? How many, of these moves?
How many curb stomps am I going to say? Yeah.
Over and over again, where it's like, okay, it's the same match. It's the same match over and over again. At least like when Seth took on Brock and he took that suplex and he flipped, like that was great. It was a different way to look at the curb stomp, a different way to look at a Seth match. If Velveteen can do that and take his moves and just change things, tweak the match itself, good. It's a different kind of match, but it feels like we're losing steam on the differences from one Velveteen match to the next.
By the way, Roman Reigns has it written in his contract that he has to do at least 5 Superman punches a match. Just so.
Yeah, at Clash of Champions, I think I hit Jimmy with 3 Superman punches that somehow he got out of the way every time when I was about to hit him with a Superman punch. It's like he saw it coming or something.
Well, for me to say one more thing about Velveteen Dream is one of the things of his character that I like the most is when he attaches himself to somebody pre-fight and into a fight. It's always kind of this, like, he's kind of got this taunting character. He's trying to not give respect to somebody. And one of the things that he does in that manner is he likes to copy people's moves. And I think that is a very clever way of keeping somebody like Velveteen fresh, because his moveset is going to be his moveset plus the mirroring of whoever he's facing at the time. And it makes it interesting.
Yeah, I thought that match on Wednesday was really good. I loved it when the rest of Undisputed Era came out. I thought Velveteen did good for most of the match. Like I said, some of those bumps that he took, I mean, he's, like Chris said, he sells them really, really well. But there were a couple where I was like, man, I don't know if he took that right there. But I mean, he's an entertaining guy. And, we talk about, WWE, it's sports entertainment. So yeah, he might have a limited-ish move set, but compared to other guys, I mean, we just talked about it in length, but compared to other guys, I think he's got more than a lot of other wrestlers that are out there. But I mean, to be honest, if you have more than 3 regular moves, I mean, you're good. Like, as long as you're not doing the same 3 things over and over and over again, I think you're good. But
what do they call it? They call it, right? You have to have it.
Yeah.
Velveteen
exactly.
That's what we talk about.
Velveteen has it. No problem.
He does. Now, who do you guys think from NXT will get, I don't want to call it promoted, but who do you guys think, if anybody at all, will get brought up to either SmackDown or Raw during the draft?
I think Velveteen is the easiest person to target at this point. But if you were going to do somebody else, I would definitely point to a woman. And I would say, especially with LeRae going against Baszler, I wouldn't be so surprised if Rhea Ripley showed up on one of the main shows.
I think Rhea Ripley is ready. I was going to go with one of the women too. It makes sense. And I like Baszler staying in NXT because, again, I think she's strong for the women's division down there, and they need that strong person. So unless they're going to swap out Baszler for somebody else, like I think we talked about offline, of the idea of maybe bringing some of the women down to NXT that aren't being used right now, I think it's a good pick on Rhea Ripley.
Other than the women, do you guys think anybody's going to get demoted from Raw or SmackDown to NXT?
I don't know that I would call it a demotion, but there are people.
I know, but
it's an opportunity.
Yeah,
not even demotion, right? It's an opportunity to shine, an opportunity to get your brand out there. I mean, just look at what Cesaro did by going over to UK for one episode. Look what Breezango is going to be able to do, by basically be reborn in NXT. Killian Dane was floundering on the main roster, now went back to NXT, and he's having a great feud with Riddle. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world to move guys down that you're not utilizing on the main show. And again, down is the wrong word. Just move guys over.
Yeah, but it's like when you look at it, it's
Sure.
kind of like, Raw's the number 1 show, SmackDown's the number 2 show, and now NXT's the number 3 show.
is the number one show.
So
I agree,
Period.
but like in normal everyday, like what like the normal WWE fan is looking at, unless you have the network and you're super into it, I think that's how the casual WWE fan looks at it. I'm not saying that NXT is the third. I think NXT is definitely better than SmackDown and could rival Raw. Their storylines are much better, but I'm talking about the casual fan sees it as the third show, the last one, the one that I miss.
well, SmackDown is going to be their quote unquote number 1 show.
It's gonna be weird.
It is. It's going to be a little bit weird. And
Like, obviously, we've grown up with Raw always being the A show. Raw has always been seen as the A show, and it's like, we obviously joke about the idea that NXT is number 1. It's number 1 because we love it. It's the best and most entertaining show we're watching. But as far as WWE's always been concerned, Raw has always been the A show. And it's, are they really going to make that switch to SmackDown? Are they really going to push SmackDown harder than Raw? Is Raw going to really fall back?
It's going to be different.
Feel like SmackDown? I
You
don't
can't,
know.
because you
I can't picture it.
I can't picture the Fiend being on SmackDown, because if they're pushing, and again, I think this is to the detriment of SmackDown, that Fox wants them to push SmackDown like it's a real sporting event, and they're going to do the draft and treat the draft as if it were a legitimate draft as well. And because of this, I can't see a world where the Fiend ends up on SmackDown. And the Fiend is the flagship of WWE right now. But it just does not make sense for him to be on SmackDown, because his character makes no sense in that realm of real sporting. You can definitely create a roster based around that. I don't think that that's going to be a problem for SmackDown. But if you're just building it based on that, then I have to assume SmackDown, unlike the other brands, might actually integrate where wins and losses really matter and your record really matters, and that's how you're getting your shots, because they got rid of that a long time ago with normal WWE stuff.
I think it's going to come down to, can Bischoff and the SmackDown writers out-program Heyman and the Raw writers?
Hell no.
When it comes to those 2 shows.
Nope.
And that's going to be the deciding factor on if SmackDown actually gets over as being the quote number 1 or A show. And I don't see it happening.
It's telling when the only way to get SmackDown the bigger buzz is to put Heyman on SmackDown to get that buzz with Brock Lesnar.
Well, I don't know.
That layering of Heyman into SmackDown is important for that right now.
Only because he's the valet, though, of the Beast, right? I mean, I don't know that. That's the problem, is that Heyman's been attached with Brock for so long. I think it was an obvious, and we talked about it, and I'm got to give kudos out to Steven, actually, because I went back to figure out when we talked about Brock, and it was like a month ago. We talked about this storyline, and we rolled with it big time, and it made a whole lot of sense to bring Brock Lesnar onto SmackDown before it swapped over. And here we are. And it's obvious that Brock Lesnar is going to be on Fox. It's obvious. But who else do you put over there? I mean, I'm assuming Reigns. The problem is you watch these ads for the WWE on Fox, and it is just chocked full of like every A-list star possible, which is interesting to me, because guess what?
Kofi, Roman,
Guess what, though? They could do that. They could do that. They could put all those people on Fox, and I still think that Raw and NXT are going to be better. Because the writing, because then you have to, if you totally cripple yourself by putting all your A-lister wrestlers on one program, you then have to lean on the writing and the development of wrestlers into better talent. And that's what makes NXT so good.
And the funny part is, before we've even gotten to Fox, they're already having issues with the writing, because look what they're about to do. They're about to have a title match on the first Fox Live show, right?
Yeah.
It's Friday Night Smackdown. What happens 2 nights later? 2 nights later, there's a pay-per-view. So we're not even going to know who's going to be in that title match at the pay-per-view, because we're waiting to see what happens on Friday night.
Well,
The timing of that, the timing of that is terrible. The storyline writing of that is terrible, because all you're going to do is do a quick flip to have a match at Hell in the Cell, because you're forcing the idea of having to have a big name on that first show, a big match on that first show.
yeah.
So I have so much issue with that, because you don't need to do it on the first show. Why do we have to have, look what NXT did. Look what NXT did on the first show this week. Did they have Adam Cole even wrestle? Did they even have their main title on the show? He just was out there. So you don't need to do it. You don't have to go out and throw everything out there at once. Take your time.
So what does bad WWE writing 101 tell us? It tells us that the way you book the match on the SmackDown is that you have Randy Orton interfere in the Kofi Kingston Brock Lesnar match, and then you make the match official in Hell in a Cell between Brock Lesnar, Kofi Kingston, and Randy Orton, because you want that third party in there, because you're not wanting to make two people in particular look overly strong or overly weak.
Good idea. I like it.
That is what I think is going down, and I think that Randy Orton then becomes the sacrificial lamb to make sure that Kofi doesn't look too weak and Brock doesn't look too strong.
So that's the right idea. I think they just did it wrong, or I should say, they had the opportunity to do it right. Kofi should have been still feuding with Randy Orton all the way through the first SmackDown. You don't even bring Brock back until that SmackDown. He comes out in the middle of a 6-man tag. So basically, you got Kofi and Randy Orton are going to go at it. You want to do Hell in the Cell? Fine. Hell in the Cell, whatever. They're going to have a match in Hell in the Cell for the title again. So Randy's going to get another shot at the title. They're out there in a 6-man tag with the Revival against the New Day. Everyone's beating the crap out of each other, spot after spot after spot. The show's coming down to an end, and all of a sudden they're laying in the ring, and it's Orton and Kofi laying in the ring, and Brock's music hits. Here comes Brock Lesnar, lays out Kofi, lays out Randy Orton, holds up the belt, inserts himself into the match on Sunday. That would have made all the sense in the world. Would have been a huge pop for Fox. Would have been headlines on all the news things about being real. ESPN would have picked it up. That would have made more sense to me than bringing Brock out right now and having this weird title match on a Friday before a pay-per-view.
Unless there's another trick up their sleeves. Unless there's somebody that, I don't know, that's going to be a surprise that they've signed or something like that.
Lashley. No, I don't want it.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know that it's too far gone. It's just typical. It's just typical writing. I mean, we talk about writing these kind of scenarios way different than they actually do it. So I think the way that I threw it out there is kind of closer to the way that they do it. I like your way better, but they don't do it better. They do it the way that they do it. So I don't know. I mean, they did a couple things this week that perplexed me. The worst one, in my opinion, being that Nakamura versus Ali match, which the second it even was gonna happen, the first thing I messaged you guys was, are they really feeding Ali to Nakamura? Really? They're feeding him to him. They're making Ali just look like a weak wuss. I was confused. Why are we walking back Ali so much?
I mean, it's like we're holding him. He's in a holding pattern, right? Like what storyline is moving forward for him right now other than losing?
But that's regardless. Like, it's fine if he loses. What the thing I don't understand is this thing where we feel like the way that we make the heel look as good as possible is to have them squash somebody. That doesn't make sense. Like, have them have a good match and win a good match. You look even better. You look better. Look, I faced good competition and I won. That's that. You can still be a heel and do that and look good.
I don't know. It's like it's a filler almost, right? Like they had nothing put together and they just filled it.
And then another thing that I can't say I'm too hot on, this Shane McMahon Kevin Owens thing. Haven't we seen this exact same thing last year or something?
Yes.
Here's my thing. Like, they're gonna fight one more time. I swear to God, if I see Sami Zayn in that match, I'm gonna like think that there's a glitch in the Matrix and agents are coming after me or something. Like, I'm confused at this storyline so much because it is just a total repeat of like a year ago.
It seems like they just have nothing for these guys, so they're just putting filler time out there.
They're just stalling for the flips, right? They're stalling because at this point, Hell in the Cell isn't even important. The most important thing is the fact that they're going to do a draft, and then all of a sudden, every single wrestling show, including AEW, is going to be kicking off or have already kicked off, and now it's WWE's play to, this is how we're going to separate people, and this is what the near future of our brands are going to look like starting October 11th. So that is the most important thing, and Hell in a Cell means nothing. So Hell in the Cell, I mean, all that I can say about Hell in the Cell is I'm assuming we're going to have Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon, and Shane McMahon is going to throw himself off of a cell and murder himself like he always does. I mean,
we can have 3 cell matches.
I mean,
that'd be the 3rd cell match.
It's almost has to be that though. It's a Shane McMahon match at Hell in the Cell. How is he not going to throw himself off of something?
Does it have to be a Shane McMahon match? Maybe they just don't have a match. Maybe this just goes on to promos. Maybe this doesn't turn into a match with Shane. Maybe there's just some weird promos that they got an idea for. I'd rather see that than another match.
And maybe, we'll suddenly live in a world where, everything is the opposite in WWE, and they care about writing and they care about story continuity, and they care about their tag team divisions and their women's tag team divisions, and then maybe, pigs will fly, and maybe I'll win the lottery, and I don't know. Have I made my point?
It's quite the dream world right there.
Yeah.
You keep laying it on there if you want. I mean, it's fun watching you try to search for things.
Okay. So, and then what do we have? Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns versus Luke Harper and Rowan too? Is that a thing?
That's gonna be a thing.
And the problem with that being a thing is this:
salvaging the storyline mess up. Yeah,
it's already an issue. You know why it's already an issue? Because how does WWE not book Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan to win that match? So you make Rowan and Harper look really strong, and then you immediately squash them. dumb, flippin' stupid. What are you doing? Your writing is so predictable.
Wait. You've already given the match to Reigns and Bryan.
Yeah.
I actually think you're jumping the gun here. I think they could have Rowan and Harper win this match.
Hey, if you didn't listen to the point I was just making, WWE writing 101 is flipping predictable as hell. And guess what? That writing, and now I could be wrong, and it's not, and this is not a point where I'm wrong and this shit gets rubbed in my face, everybody. This is a point where if I'm wrong, I come on and I'm like, thank goodness I was wrong. Thank goodness they apparently listened to the podcast this week and, decided not to do the thing that they always do. But guess what? Their history tells me that you have suddenly made a baby face out of Reigns and Bryan as a duo, and there's no way that they're going to have those two lose. And if they do lose and they do get destroyed, well, thank goodness you did something right, WWE. But if we come on here after a week or two and they have actually won, guess what? What a waste of time. Why'd you even bring Luke Harper back?
And when Jimmy takes a breath, then we'll rub it in. But yes, we need them to win. We need Luke Harper and Rowan to win. We need it to happen. We need that direction.
Again, this is another thing where me and you see eye to eye on this, Chris. If you're right, thank God you're right. You don't want me to be right. I don't want me to be right. We both want you to be right about this.
No one ever wants Jimmy to be right.
That is not factually accurate.
Factually accurate. I mean, it's the week of Chris, so I mean, obviously, I'm going to make the picks the right way, and obviously, you're going to make the picks the wrong way.
Thank goodness. If that's your pick and that works out, thank goodness. Because if I'm right about this and the bad writing comes in and makes I have no problem with Roman Reigns being a babyface, and I've got no problem with Daniel Bryan being a babyface, but this is not you create momentum. I think we're all in agreement that the spot at the end of the Smackdown where it was just it was just full octane. They were just destroyed. They just destroyed Reigns and they just destroyed Bryan, and there was just no mercy, and they were just destroying security and destroying refs. Yes, this is good. This looks good on them. And they need to carry that momentum. Yeah. They do not need to get beaten by two people that are not going to realistically beat them.
But again, you're talking about two people that over the last year have put people over. Think about how many matches Roman Reigns has lost in the last year. Think about the matches that Daniel Bryan has lost. Daniel Bryan's the reason why we have Kofi Kingston. I think you're miscalculating the situation here with the wrestlers. I mean, yes, I think writing is a problem, but I think this specific situation, we have the right two wrestlers that are going to put over wrestlers that deserve to be put over at this point, that have some momentum. And I think if you do it right, these guys can go to the moon, Harper and Rowan. I think they're pushing Rowan right now. And I think everyone would push Harper right now because everyone knows what's been going on with him, and he's been kind of shelved for a while. So this is the perfect time to do something a little different. And they're starting to do that. And I trust that they're going to keep doing that until they let me down and I have to listen to you rant on for an hour.
And it just increases the number of good tag teams in WWE with the Bludgeon Brothers coming back.
Uh-oh. Chuck just jinxed it, Chris. He called them a tag team. You know what WWE thinks about tag teams.
Yes, I do.
Oh, that's the thing. Because I was all in, and then it just reminded me that it's a tag team, and now they're just going to bury him. I just
rewind the last 30 seconds and delete that.
Yeah, let's just edit that out, maybe.
No editing. No editing. Because at the end of the day,
WWE, leave the tag team division into a different area. Just leave them and let them do what they need to do with tag teams. Don't even write it. Just send 4 guys out to the ring and say, do what you want. And maybe we'll actually get a decent tag division.
We're going into this writing section, and somewhere Eric Bischoff is having conversations with people going, I like these guys who used to be the Bludgeon Brothers. I think I want them to come over. And then Vince walks in the room. We need Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan to win tonight. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Maybe he'll be too busy with Antonio Brown and the XFL. Maybe he won't pay attention. Here's hoping.
Nah. Hoping nothing. It's...
okay, so they did something right? Like, and I'm going to go back to bragging, but at the same time, I want to point out they did something right. They let Baron Corbin win the King of the Ring, which makes all the sense in the world to me, and I hope to a lot of people that have common sense. But I think a lot of people were a little bit against it. And I want to point out, and Jimmy, you brought this up on some of your social media, people were talking about, how could you not have him lose and put over Chad Gable? Well, the whole point of building Baron Corbin up as this amazing heel is because then he goes and he puts over Chad Gable on Tuesday night and makes Chad Gable look like a great babyface. And I think that's what they're doing right now. We're worried and we're going to complain about writing, but let's point out that yes, Baron Corbin is the face maker. Baron Corbin is probably one of their best heels right now because he's able to put over anybody he wrestles against, and they're using him right and they're writing it right. So as much as they do things wrong in tag divisions and some of the Roman Reigns stuff and some of the Daniel Bryan stuff, they are doing some of this mid-card stuff right.
Yeah, what Chris is referring to is King of the Ring had finished, and I think it was Brian Alvarez with the Wrestling Observer. He had tweeted out something like, oh, I'm really torn about King of the Ring because, you need more baby faces. And my response to that was, well, first of all, are baby faces actually compelling? That's the first important question, because baby faces are very, very difficult to master. The last one that they did was Kofi, and it was very organic. They didn't think that was going to happen. It just did, right? And my point past that was, okay, and if you're worried about baby faces, well, you still have Ali, you still have Cedric Alexander, you still have Daniel Bryan that at the time I said was just very close that you could just flip him the other direction, which kind of looks like what's happening. We've taken Daniel Bryan, and all of a sudden you're starting to feel sympathy for him because he's getting destroyed by, Rowan and Harper. And then past that, you definitely didn't need Gable to win for him to be a compelling babyface. And a babyface is not going to win King of the Ring and constantly go out there and gloat about how they won King of the Ring. So you're going to see them have the glory of winning King of the Ring one time, and that's probably, from a character perspective, all you'll ever hear about it from that person. That's not the right person to win King of the Ring. You need heels to win King of the Ring. So while I know that the boss, Stephen Hill, is disappointed that Chad Gable did not win, it was not practical for Chad Gable to win King of the Ring.
Who's the best King of the Ring we've seen? The best, like, after the fact, who won King of the Ring and then took it and built it into something that was just incredible in your mind?
I don't know. Owen Hart, maybe?
I mean, he was good. Owen Hart, I think, still already had a character behind that. I think I was going more in the direction of like the Macho Man and how the Macho Man turned it into the Macho King. and Queen Sherry, and he built a whole nother character persona around that he rode for how long? Like forever, it seemed like, where he was the Macho King. Or even Booker T. Booker T winning King of the Ring and turning into King Booker. That was interesting, right?
I was going to say Booker T or Austin.
See, and I was hoping someone would say Austin, because I'm like, was Austin a great after the fact King of the Ring? Or I should say, or was it the one promo he cut after winning King of the Ring where he built Austin 316?
It was definitely the promo, but that made him into who he was from that point forward.
That was the launching point, essentially, for Steve Austin.
ECW was the launching point for Steve Austin, let's be honest.
Well, in WWE. In WWE, it was launching point. But I would lean towards like the Macho Man or Booker T as I mean, Bret Hart was a good one too. Harley Race obviously spent like 10 years being the king of the ring. But like there's just I think Corbin's gonna go into that same conversation if they do it right, where he can take this character and move forward with it. So to your point, Jimmy, I don't think Chad Gable needed to be king of the ring, because I don't think he would have done anything with it going forward, where I think Corbin can make this annoying and just so heelish for the rest of the year into the next year.
What's the argument why no babyface ever or face ever should win King of the Ring? It should always be a heel. But I think, it's interesting because looking back through everything, through all the picks we've made, through all of King of the Ring, the biggest question,
wrong picks you've made.
Yeah. Well, no, but the biggest question I have, is for two people in particular. What are we doing with Andrade? And what are we doing with Buddy Murphy? Because Andrade, very soon after he got ousted out of the King of the Ring tournament, got fed to The Miz. Right before Clash of Champions. It was weird.
But that was all to build up, even though he didn't really need to, The Miz for that match against Nakamura.
I know that at the moment of Clash of Champions, like when we were waiting for Clash of Champions, me and Chris were having an argument about that, because I didn't think that it was necessary to have. I still don't think it was necessary to have Andrade even in that match.
But and this is the argument. Is Andrade strong still? Do you still have confidence in Andrade being a strong wrestler, a good wrestler, of somebody that is conceivable to win any match that he's in? That's where I go with it.
I mean, he's a heel. I mean, but the problem is he's a sleazy heel, so he can win any match anytime because of that.
But he can lose. But you always make the argument about looking strong in a loss, not having to win every match. Andrade is the perfect example of that. I literally don't care if Andrade wins or loses a match. I just know I'm going to get a good match.
Sure.
And out of it, an interesting storyline going forward based on whoever wins the match. I don't need Andrade to win.
Point made. I think that's a good point. I concede that point to you.
Woohoo! Roll!
The week continues for Tiro.
What about Buddy Murphy, though? Where's Buddy Murphy?
I think Buddy Murphy was collateral damage in a bad written storyline with the Roman Reigns situation, where they kind of stuck him in there. He kind of fit in for a second. He got a great push out of it, and then basically just got pushed to the side, and he's in a holding pattern. So I don't have a good answer for Buddy Murphy, unfortunately.
It's like I feel like Vince McMahon is some weird, insane, mad scientist going. Oh, look, Buddy Murphy's starting to get an organic following like Kofi. Let's go ahead and squash that while we can. Because I want to write it our way, not the way that the fans want to write it.
They are letting him be a face, though. Apparently, he's been like shaking hands with wrestlers and stuff, before matches, and being all like face-ish in after matches, even when he loses.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that I like. I feel like Buddy Murphy's a better heel. You know,
It's
he's
like
he's a good heel to Ali's face, right?
It's interesting because so many people are just always better, at being heels. That is the one thing where I'll give Mr. Alvarez a little bit of a nod, where it's just like, I don't disagree that we definitely need faces, but there's just so many people that are not compelling as faces. And yeah, I don't think Buddy Murphy is compelling as a face. I agree with you.
I think there's a bigger one to point out, and his name is The Miz. I hate The Miz as a face.
Well, as long as he has that television show, he's never going to be a heel.
I know. I don't. I love Miz as a heel. He's such a great heel. How many times have we talked about how great Miz is as the heel, and how he really did elevate the Intercontinental title, with Dolph Ziggler, with Seth Rollins, with Finn Balor. But like as a face, I don't feel him elevating anything right now. He's just a mid-card sideshow act that comes out every night for some random match and random storyline.
If you want The Miz to remain a face, they should just bring John Morrison back.
I hated The Miz, and I mean that was like the best incarnation of The Miz. I hated him so much, and now I'm like, I don't know, I kind of like The Miz, and I feel like that's wrong. Like I shouldn't like him.
Has WWE made their King Corbin shirt yet? Because I need to buy that shirt for Chuck.
Want one.
I'm gonna check real quick.
Please do.
No.
You might want one,
no.
but you don't want one as much as Chuck wants one. And
yeah.
do we have a good shirt for Creamy Kraemer? Who's Creamy Kraemer's least favorite wrestler right now?
Right now, I'm not sure. We'll have to ask Creamy Kraemer who he despises, but I don't know he's going to tell us right now, since we just basically gave him the in that he's going to get a shirt of it.
Hey, listen, I understand how this all works, okay? So even if I said somebody that I liked, you still wouldn't get it.
We know that Creamy Kraemer's favorite wrestler is the Ultimate Warrior. We are aware.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
Now, who is his least favorite wrestler? We'll figure it out.
That's the mission. The mission has been set. I'm gonna go ahead.
I can say I don't know exactly who my least favorite would be. I know who I get bored watching, and that would be Roman Reigns. But as far as the guy that I absolutely despise, I don't know yet.
All right. So if anybody wants to make recommendations on who Creamy Kraemer should start hating, just write them in the comments section of our podcast.
Yeah,
let's
take
us
a
up
poll
on social media.
Yeah, put a poll down in the comment section, and we'll go from there.
Well, it was funny because Chris bought me the Randy Orton shirt, and obviously I'm outspoken
out of nowhere.
I'm very outspoken about wrestlers that obviously I dislike at a time, and it's definitely from a kind of a kayfabe perspective. Because I've got all the respect for Randy Orton, but the character that they've been pushing for the last however many years, I'm just always like, I'm bored. Like, get the hell out of here. I don't need this. But it was funny because after he got me that shirt, I'm sitting there with him and his girls, and I was like, oh, what bad wrestler shirt should I get your father? And they both go Bobby Lashley, and he visibly cringed when they said it, and I was like, well, looks like that's the one.
They know me all too well. Though it was fun this week to hear both of them just repeat after me and go, King Corbin, all hail King Corbin, Chuckles, all hail.
That's awesome.
It's gonna happen. It's going to happen, Chuck. Just be ready for it.
It's interesting because as we have this conversation, it really points out what's a good character and what's not working. Because as much as Chuck might hate Corbin as the king, or even Corbin as the character, And as much as James, you don't love Randy Orton, I think that's what makes a good heel. That's what makes a good character. It needs to be somebody who you don't like. You essentially are annoyed by every time you see on the TV. And that's what's working. We joke that, these are bad characters. Even Lashley, I got to give the credit to the WWE. He's annoying as crap because of the whole Leo Rush thing that they had going, but it was working. People hated him. People hated him as a heel, and that makes sense. That's what they need more of. That's why Miz was always good. You physically hated him. You even said it, Chuck. He was annoying. You disliked him.
Yeah, it's the when it gets to you love to hate them is when you know that like the character is working. It's like I mean anybody that's listened to the podcast knows that I'm not the biggest fan right now of or wasn't the biggest fan of Brock Lesnar. Because at a time I don't really think his character was working. Like Roman Reigns, his character wasn't working, but I just don't like them now like at the time. So it's like it's a not working thing for me. Like, yeah, I hate Baron Corbin. I hate the fact that he won. I hate the fact that Chris picked it like just about from the beginning. I hate the fact that I have to hear King Corbin every time I talk to Tiro on the phone. But it's like it's working. It's like it's the perfect shtick for him and everything. But like Roman Reigns, I just hate him. I don't love to hate him. I just hate him. Like Brock Lesnar for a period of time, I really loved Lesnar when he came out. Like so much so that as a present from some of the guys, Tiro and Mike, I actually have the like a real title with Lesnar's nameplate on it. I mean, I loved Lesnar. I would do Lesnar's F5 like so much. And now I'm just like, but I
Too
don't know.
much.
When I saw him on Tuesday, I was kind of like, ooh, I don't know. Maybe you're getting back into my good graces, Brock. We'll see.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, hell.
Damn it. I hate you.
Common.
And that's where we end the podcast right there. Done.
Oh, by the way, this isn't one of those fun podcasts where I'm like going to be searching for what to call the podcast. The name of this week's podcast was made at Clash of Champions, up in the cheap seats where me and Chris were, where when Sasha Banks came out, this guy started yelling at the top of his lungs over and over and over again, "Go back to Boston, bitch." And it was,
you have to understand. Ouch. You have to understand. We were physically in the last row. The last row. And this guy must have yelled this, I don't know, 50 times down to the ring like she could hear him over and over again. But then there was a point where he wasn't completing his sentence. He would keep saying it but not saying the end of his sentence.
Yeah. So I'm not going to call it go back. I'm not going to call it go back to Boston, bitch, but I am going to call the episode Go Back to Boston. Like that was just one of those really weird things. Wrestling fans in general, it's always interesting being around a lot of wrestling fans and this definitely isn't a knock. Maybe it will be a knock on a wrestling fan like that who around a lot of even young kids and stuff like that is saying bitch over and over and over again. So that makes it a little bit uncomfortable.
Or the kids from Philly.
Oh. Yeah. So we already have an assigned seat for Chuck at Houston, and it is probably all the way at the aisle and probably the fronted row of that aisle, so that and maybe I'll sit behind him. So if there's anybody he's going to turn around and try to kill, it might be me.
Jimmy plans on standing behind him and just going, Trish Stratus, Trish Stratus, Trish Stratus.
Just spit all over his head.
I love it. Love it.
Oh, man. Yep, that's a thing that happened. So yeah.
Maybe one day that'll go on the Bald Monkeys Facebook page. The video will go up there. Who knows? There is
Oh,
some vulgarity in it, but I don't know.
Well, we
Since
could
I'm the
just-
only one that has that video, it'll be up to my discretion.
Yeah. Well, we could always go to WWE Network and go back and watch the end of that Royal Rumble and watch these random
True.
5 people walk out for some reason before the match, like before the show's over. Like they're like running to the parking lot or something. Like, what's wrong, guys?
they were terrified that they were about to die. But my bigger point being, like, there's a lot of wrestling fans out there that are into a lot of things. And like, what was interesting was we had this family, like in front, like this woman, and she was actually it seemed like she was pretty knowledgeable. Like, she watches wrestling with her kids a lot, I could tell. But her and her family were literally into every wrestler that I dislike. It's like, everybody I hate, that's who you're rooting for. And I think that this happens a lot at wrestling shows, doesn't it, Chris? I think
Yes.
I'm always on the side of the heels, and I'm always, like, especially when we're at house shows, I'm always cheering the person that everybody is hating. Like, we went to the one house show, and it was Andrade versus somebody. I can't even remember who it was. But everybody was on the against Andrade, and I was like the only person screaming for Andrade, like as loud as I could.
I think it was Andrade and Rusev.
Yes,
Wasn't
yeah,
Andrade
it was
and
Rusev Day. Yeah. And everybody was on Rusev Day, the Rusev Day wagon back then. And I was like screaming for Andrade.
Well, you also had the Buddy Murphy Cedric Alexander match where people were yelling. A couple people were yelling it was boring.
It's like,
Or, you know,
what?
Yeah, and again, it's the population of wrestling right now where it's like a lot of these fans don't get into it as much as
I love
we
it
do,
though. You know what?
essentially,
But I love
right?
the diversity of it. I think that's the bigger point I'm trying to make. I like that there's a fan base for wrestlers that I don't like, because it keeps it interesting. You know, I it would be boring if I was really into a couple of these wrestlers and everybody just agreed with me and they cheered for those wrestlers too. I like the dynamics. The dynamics are important.
That's what makes it fun to go to wrestling events, right? To argue with people you have no idea who they are and argue about like what wrestlers you love. I mean, we would argue at shows. We know each other, and we'd sit
Yeah.
there and argue with each other in the middle of a match.
Oh yeah, what was that match? It was
NXT,
Velveteen Dream
Velveteen
versus Gargano. Yeah, you were wrong, by the way. Even though I think Gargano won, but we were like jumping up and screaming at each other. That was 2. No, it was 3.
I'm like, sit down.
Sit down. Shut up. Oh God, it's fun. Everybody listening, go to a wrestling show. Go, especially a house show. Go somewhere where there's not going to be too many cameras. Like that's wrestling at its best.
Even if you don't like wrestling, even if you're not sure about wrestling, you know, like give it a shot. Give it a shot at one of these house shows, and I bet you get interested in a little bit more in wrestling. I think that's what people. It's like going to a hockey game, right? Like not a lot of people love hockey to watch on TV, but if you go to a hockey game live, it's just a whole different dynamic. And I think wrestling's the same way. Going there and being part of the crowd, being around everyone, getting down low, hopefully for some, you know, not spending too much money, but getting closer to the event. I think it's a different environment that people don't realize is really fun.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's our time. Oh, and speaking, you know what? I'm going to jump on that last little train that you started there, and let's throw out a little bit of a shout out to the New Jersey Devils. Let's go New Jersey Devils, and let's say, and we'll say boo to Gordon's fish sticks.
Agreed.
Well, wait a second. Yay to Gordon's fish sticks.
Well,
because
yes,
they're delicious.
They are delicious.
Yes. Boo to the team that is associated with them.
Haters gonna hate. That's all I gotta say.
All right. Well, that's been our piece. I really appreciate you coming on today, Creamy Kraemer. It's fun to finally have your arrival. It's been exciting.
Well, thank you. It's been a long time coming, and definitely was interesting.
And now next time you just need to talk more.
Yeah, and well, Jimmy, you would need to shut up more, and then that would work.
Well, you
Absolutely.
and Chris, you would need to shut up more too.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen either. Hey, it is what it is. Thank you, everybody, for listening. However, wherever you're listening, we appreciate it. And we hope you come back next week. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in wrestling right now. And we're really looking forward to it. And it looks like Chris is getting ready to troll us one more time.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll let him troll. We'll let him troll us one more time.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, like,
Thanks for
subscribe,
coming on.
share,
Like,
all that
subscribe,
stuff.
comment, all that, and everyone must remember.
Cut it. Cut the music. Cut the music.
Hail King Corbin!
King
Corbin.